Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. Next project I'm working on is I'd like to build a box to hold this Stanley Type 1 block plane. I have a couple videos on this plane to give you a few more details. It's a type of plane I think is so valuable I'm never going to use it. Just want to store it away and be able to enjoy looking at it. Here, this is a Type 1 of the Stanley 9 3/4. So this guy is like the great granddaddy of this common Stanley block plane. And I have a whole bunch of pieces of this thin mahogany that seems to be around 3/8 of an inch thick. And I think what I'm going to do is glue them up and come up with some stock to make the boxes out of it. And I did my best to find 4 pieces with reasonably similar grain and align it so that it more or less looks uniform. Okay, and here it is all glued up. There are the 4 pieces. Glue joints seem pretty well aligned. Got good tension in there, good compression from the wedge, and I got the cleats spreading the force, so just gotta let that set up. For this particular glue up, I'm using my table saw as a joiner, just skimming the surface of the board. And here's another stack up ready to glue. This glue up is going to be the 2 long sides. For this glue up, I have a piece of granite I'm going to use as a flat surface. I have the pieces of paper here. Okay, here are these 2 blanks out of the jigs. The glue ups were pretty good, not perfect, but good enough for this project. And for the bottom, I think I'm going to use this piece of Luan plywood. It's a similar color and grain structure to the mahogany, and it'll make the job a little bit easier and give me a little more room. Okay, I just finished milling up the 6 pieces. This piece is the top. This is the bottom piece. These 2 are the long sides and the short sides. And here's a visual, kind of what I'm thinking. That would be the lid there. And there's the tool resting in there. I think the left and right and top and bottom dimensions are pretty good. Okay, I just pulled out my double box joint finger joint sled. I have a video on how I made it if you're interested. But set up this way, it takes a standard narrow kerf table saw blade, which is 100 thousandths of an inch thick, or 1/10 of an inch. And if I turn the sled around and use it this way, then it's set up to take one of these really narrow kerf circular saw blade 7 1/4 inch jobbies. And I did a couple test cuts, and that's how it's going to fit together on the stock we're talking about. The problem with such narrow fingers is it takes you forever to make the cuts because there's so many of them. The good news is it's an amazingly strong joint because there's a huge amount of glue surface. Okay, here they are all cut. I did take the time to label them. So I'm thinking about what the box is going to look like when you first pull it open. I'd rather have it at an angle, and that's 45 degrees, which looks okay, but again, you're looking a little too much at a side view. And I've got these angles that are part of my sharpening kit to make sure I get the bevel angles I'm looking for, and I think that's 20 degrees, and I'm looking down on it from my perspective. That's okay. This one here is 30 degrees, and I think I like that the best. So what I want to do is put together a cradle. Instead of having 2 blocks that are 45 degrees off, I want one that's 30 degrees and 60 degrees. So all I have to do is rip a piece of wood 30 degrees on an angle, then I'll have the 2 pieces that I need. And there are the 2 pieces. You put them together, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. I have this somewhat portable router station that I made many years ago, and I have a video on it if you're interested in seeing how I cobbled it together. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and it's a convenient platform. I just use to route the 4 grooves. on the inside bottom of what's going to be the box. Okay, I've assembled the box and checked it for a square. The joints are pretty tight. It's not glued or anything. And I made this miniature pinch stick just a little while ago, and I'll have a video on it. It might be out already, and I'm going to use that to measure the inside dimensions of this grooved area. I have four pieces of mahogany in there, and that kind of gives a bed for the plane to sit down in. The tallest part here is the knob. Yeah, just put this across the top and measure. Okay, so here's a mock-up with the plane in the box. It's just held together with friction, and I have the groove there, and it looks as though there's room for the lid to sit on. It's going to sit, I'm going to try to get it to sit flush with the top, but you can see there's somewhere around 1/8 of an inch. As you can see there, I have a repair I'm going to have to effect. There's another one on this corner. 3 repairs so far, and I think trying to glue this is going to be quite a challenge. So before I glue it, I'm going to prepare the insides of the pieces, clean them up. You might think this is an opportunity for a hand plane, but actually I think I'm going to use a card scraper. These glue joints are pretty good, just a teeny ridge in here. I am going to sand lightly the insides of the grooves. Okay, I got this together. I had to pull it together with my clamps here. But it seems as though all the joints are tight. I wiped away the glue. Well, here it is with the glue dried, and I think it looks amazing. In fact, these finger joints standing a little proud actually gives it a very interesting look. I got half a mind to leave it that way. It's kind of a cool feature, but probably not. I also took the time to glue in a plug here. This was one of the finger joints that was broken, and unfortunately, I don't know how well it's showing, it came through over here, and that's going to interfere with the operation of the lid. Should have been a little more careful when I did that. Fortunately, I have this very long chisel and I can carefully get down there, hopefully, and pare it away. I use my Lee Nielsen low angle block plane. You need a really sharp blade, but that is nice and smooth. So 1 down, 7 more to go. My Stanley 220 here also does a good job. This is the narrowest kerf saw that I have, and I'm going to use it to very carefully try to cut the corner off of this box, use it as part of the lid. Okay, there's the piece cut free. So I can certainly use rulers to measure the width and the depth of what the lid's going to look like, but I don't have a good way to measure parallelism of these two channels. So I made this teeny weeny pinch rod that I can put in here and adjust to the width at the front here, and then kind of gently slide it back and try to get a feel for how parallel. Looks like I got a tight spot right around here, and the rest of it seems actually a little looser. There's the plane sitting in, and I've snuck up on all the dimensions. I had to take some off of here to chamfer it a little bit. Apparently the lip on the end doesn't quite line up with the two sides, and this slides in, and it's a reasonable friction fit. Okay, I have very carefully cut the business end of the lid, and I cleaned up that mortise to fit, and that sits like so. That looks pretty good to me. There's a little gap here, but it tends to match the gap that's on the other 3 sides, so I like that. Before I glue this piece on, I'd like to put a little bit of an indentation in here so that you'll have something to grip when you go to slide the top out. I wish I had a round scoop type of chisel, but I don't. I'm gonna have to put a shouldered groove onto this. I have a 6.5 inch diameter blade that will fit on my table saw. This is a blade from a circular saw, and I'm kind of thinking in cross section if I can just skim away about yay much. And I've never done anything like this before, so we'll see how this goes. So I have the blade set to almost go all the way into the lid, and I think the apex is right about here. And if I measure the distance from the apex, goes back into the table saw, that's over an inch, about an inch and a quarter. And that's a little longer than I wanted, an inch and a quarter. I was thinking of something more like 3/4 of an inch. So the other idea I'm having is if I put a block under the wood, then that will cut a shallower curve into the top. Okay, so I think I have a setup here. I have my feather board to act as a stop so that I don't accidentally go too far. Okay, the two cuts look reasonably uniform. They went a little deeper than I planned on. Okay, just carefully hogged it out, and that came out really good. I mean, that's a smooth groove. This isn't as flimsy as I feared it would be. So yeah, that worked out really well. Okay, now we're just gonna glue it up. Okay, here's the lid all glued up, and that goes together quite nicely. I also glued these two pieces together. These three pieces are going to form the cradle. That's actually going to hold the plane like so. And then the plane sit there like so, and the lid slides on. Okay, I put a little tape on the two ends of the plane, and I have these two pieces. I'm going to try to glue into place very carefully. I don't want to get too much glue in there. I don't want to accidentally glue these pieces to the box, and there's really no good way to clamp it. I have a ton of boiled linseed oil, and I think that's the perfect finish for a project like this. It's historical, which is certainly in the spirit of the plane that the box is holding, and it darkens the wood, which will make this mahogany look even more rich. And it's not the most durable finish, but this box is never going to be bounced around or out in the weather or anything like that. So with an oil finish, you want to make sure any places that look dry, get a little more oil on them. You want to really give the oil a chance to soak in anywhere and everywhere it wants to. And let that sit for a few minutes. Okay, the oil's had several minutes to soak in. All I'm going to do is take a paper towel and rub it around a little bit more. Paper towel gets saturated, helps spread the oil a little bit more. Some parts of the wood really soaked it up, other parts not so much so. And boiled linseed oil is the oil you have to really be careful of. You don't dispose of these cavalierly. They can spontaneously combust because as the oil polymerizes, it's exothermic, so it can generate heat. And this paper towel is pretty saturated, so I'm not removing a lot of oil as much as just wiping it around. In the areas where the wood can absorb a little more, it will. Okay, now I'm going to start wiping it to remove any excess oil, and we'll give this a day or two to set up. And just for an illustration, this schmutz around the top of the can, the linseed oil, forms something that looks like a plastic. That's a polymer, and by today's standards, not the most durable finish in the world, but a couple hundred years ago, 100 years ago, this was certainly one of the chosen ones. Okay, it's the next day, and this rag that I put the linseed oil on, it's almost dry, a little bit crusty. Probably got another day or so to go. But these pieces feel very nice, so I think these are ready to go. And just got a little schmutz on them from the paper towel, and that's looking pretty good. It's funny, the boiled linseed oil makes this slide a lot easier. Okay, it's been 2 days and the paper towel dry to the touch. It was warm and sunny yesterday, so I was able to put these out in the sun for several hours, so the pieces feel dry. I'm just going to apply a little bit of paste wax to most of the areas and let that set up. So here it is all finished up. I think it looks pretty good. If I slide it open, there's the tool in there, and it's fairly well captured. The box is just about big enough to hold it. Could have been a little bit narrower, but then I think the aspect ratios would have looked a little funny. So I also think it's a nice touch to have this at a slight angle to give you more of a 3/4 view of the tool. The box came out great. There are a couple of boo-boos that I made. The top of the box, I got some imperfections here in the surface, and there's a little bit of wax accumulated in there. This surface was supposed to be the top, but when I was milling the top, I did it backwards. Oh well, you live and learn. Another thing I intended on doing is there's little tiny gaps in here because the top of the saw blade is not a flat tooth, so I meant to fill those in, but they're pretty small, so it doesn't look too bad. Well, there it is all finished up, and I think it looks great. Really appreciate you stopping by and spending some time on my channel. I think this project came out wonderful, and I'm looking forward to appreciating it. Of course, it's not without its mistakes, but hey, it's always a learning experience. And as I like to say, thanks for stopping by. Stay safe, take care, keep your eyes out for the next one.